Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 587. Releasing February 16 in theaters across the US is Land of Bad, an action thriller that stars Liam Hemsworth as a rookie Air Force combat controller who finds himself behind enemy lines after a mission gone haywire. His only hope for survival is a seasoned Air Force drone pilot played by Russell Crowe. A war thriller of high stakes, intense action scenes, and engaging performances. Land of Bad also marks the latest film from director William Eubank. I'm glad to say joins me now on the podcast. How are you, William?
Oh, not too bad. Thank you for having me. I love
Absolutely.
that word haywire. That's like things go haywire. It's like, what does that even mean? But I love the word. It's like shit gets crazy. But yeah, haywire is such a good word. Anyways, good to be on the podcast. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And shit indeed does go crazy in your movie. Um, it's really interesting. Just doing some research on it. From what I understand, it's like 15 years back, you had the initial idea for this film and you wrote a script, the initial stages of a script for it anyway, at that time. And drone warfare at that time was a really kind of like cornerstone of like counterterrorism warfare at that time, right? So what was it
Yeah,
about the drone warfare that really kind of appealed to you as a filmmaker and storyteller that you wanted to base a war film around that type of evolution of war?
I mean, yeah. So we wrote this thing a long time ago, all the way in the Signal days. And at the time, we were like learning more about like where these I think we had discovered that like yeah the drone operators, and maybe that was public knowledge or I just didn't know, but I did not know that a drone operator back then was in Las Vegas or around Creech or whatever, and he's doing missions all the way across the world. So that was super enticing to me, and it just seemed like the perfect place to build a story around. um but it wasn't really until we met some of the JTACs themselves and went out to like Fort Irwin that the real sort of story of the guys on the ground started to mesh with the guys in the room back in the States.
When it came to basing this story in the Sulu Sea, which is just reading up on it, it's just absolutely fascinating. It's this like this pirate stronghold in the Pacific
Yeah,
Ocean.
it's really
Was that
wild.
always? It is crazy. I mean, is that something that was always on top of mind of basing this film there, or did you have kind of like other places, other places of interest that went through like the evolution of this script?
Absolutely. Like, to be quite frank, we originally, of course, had it out in the desert. And over time that sort of felt like that story had been told, and the more we got into it, the more we realized that like a lot of drone work and a lot of special forces stuff are things that we never hear about, may never hear about, unless something happens where somebody really wants to get to the bottom of it and it gets declassified a million years later. So when we started looking into that and looking at where are those hot zones, they are all over the world. There's things that happen in Africa, there's things that happen in the Philippines, and we were like, okay, could we place this somewhere else? And I remember at one point we were having a conversation with somebody about, well, okay, if the drone flew from here and it was taking off from Guam, is that too far? And they kind of like wink, wink. We're like, well, we can't say anything, but there's bases that are a lot closer than that. And that's when we were like, oh, wow, okay, that's good to know. Like, it was very eye-opening, I guess you could say. But yeah, I guess there's little, there's just at that point we were like, okay, we don't need to set this in a sand movie. We could make this kind of a throwback to action 90s jungle stuff that we love and really enjoy. So
Please support Matt's movie reviews on Patreon. Get access to exclusive content, request movie reviews and top 10 lists, and help support my work. Please click on the Patreon link in the description below. Speaking of those action jungle stuff that we love, Liam Hemsworth is really thrown into the ringer here. Such a physical performance that he has in this movie. What was that like filming those scenes with Liam where he's just been surrounded by explosions, all this, just like mock gunfire, running through the jungle and such. I mean, when you have a physical performance like that, I'm sure it would have been not only fun to put together, but also very high risk as well to try to pull something off like that.
Yeah. Look, you're always just carefully, everything's so planned out. We had a lot of explosions on this, and a lot of them, most of them are real. So it's just, you're just, you move very slowly, very methodically. Um, and yeah, it seems crazy, when you cut it together, but it's such a slow, very careful process that, we're always trying to, we're doing it in safe ways. And my stunt coordinator, Mark Rayner, I've done every single movie I've ever done with him. Now he's working on Tron up in Toronto, I believe. But he's such a genius, and he's, of course, he was a stunt guy himself, so he's very like safety conscious. So yeah, we're just always being really careful, and Liam just threw himself at it and just like put the pedal to the metal every time, and just really it was just such a joy working with him, because he just would never stop. So I'm excited. Yeah, just I'm pumped for him to continue kind of doing this kind of cool, crazy stuff. So such a good guy.
On the other end of the spectrum, we have Russell Crowe, who plays the drone operator. I have a little theory and a question in regards to the appearance in this film. Did the infamous director John Milius in any way influence his look? Because when I was looking at Russ at sometimes during the movie, I was like, because I've watched a Milius documentary a couple of months ago, and I've been on a bit of a Milius kick lately. I'm just like, man, he could pull off a really good John Milius because it just sometimes it looks with
He
the
didn't,
jumping
but I
and
mean that's
the
great. It's so funny. I mean, I could totally see that. But yeah, no, it wasn't the influence really, but that's amazing. That's an amazing thought for sure.
When it comes to the interactions between the two, whenever I talk to directors about scenes where people are talking to each other via phone or some type of communication device, they go about it in different ways. How do
Yeah.
you go about it with Liam and Russ? Do you have any time them actually talking to each other, or is it all just like off camera with other people?
No, what you do like on a movie like this, because obviously they're going to happen in sections. So what we did is we did a ton of reads with Russell and Liam first. And that way we could really get to the bottom of each scene and really go, okay, we're pretty sure that this is how the scene's going to play out. And if there's any changes, we could kind of make those changes and, really think about what they're going to be talking about. We establish that first, and those are just reads. Those are like rehearsals. Then from there, you do the action, gather the action, and in our case, it was pretty cool because we actually had a drone, an infrared drone, all time, always shooting the whole movie above the action. So what we were able to do was shoot Liam's scenes, have this infrared drone, and then when we went back to the drone room, Liam would be in a room or two rooms away, fully kitted out, talking to Russell. And then Russell was able to, like, we were able to build onto his screen our drone footage of the action. And he actually, this is the crazy thing, the guys somehow built it in where he could use his actual joystick, zoom in, zoom out, pan around, watch the image as it was playing, and also control his computer, which is just mind-blowing to me. The only unrealistic thing was there was always like, off to the side in that footage for him, there was like a camera crew, on the ground. But it was pretty cool the way it worked. And that's like it was great for their ability to just really act with each other. So
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you love. The camaraderie between the two is really strong, and you can feel it throughout the film. And it made me think it's such a high intense situation that the drone pilots and the people on the ground are in, life and death, literally. In any of your research, did you ever find out whether the drone pilots and the people on the ground ever interact in real life afterwards, or do they have to have a certain amount of separation between the two so there's no blurring lines there?
it's I never, I don't know. If I'm sure they have. Depending on. That's a good question. I'm sure they have, but I'm sure it's really rare because I'm sure you get probably different pilots every single time and I'm sure it's very, you know, robotic to a certain degree at first, but depending on what you go through, I'm sure if you go through a real gauntlet like this, I have a feeling those people would meet. But if it's just like you're getting called in and you're just painting a 9-line for something and then you log off, you probably are never, ever, ever hearing from that pilot ever again. But I'm sure if it was something like this, and I'm sure there have been situations like that, I'm sure they connect, I would like to
I
hope
have
so.
to, yeah, because I'm just thinking to myself, how cool would it be if there was, in a world where both of these characters kind of like meet up for a beer at the spot that
Well, it's
that they're
so
both
funny.
grew
That
up
was a
in, right?
note. It was a note from the producers that we should throw a scene in the very end where they're meeting up for a beer. So that would have been great. We should have had that scene and
Uh,
they're both hitting golf balls out onto the tarmac.
at that time, I'm sure Russ's character Reaper will be up to his fifth marriage. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
um,
Land
I
of
got to give
Dad.
you,
That's our
yeah,
scene.
Land of
It's going to
Dad,
be called Land of Dad.
Land of Dad, absolutely. Um, when it came to a certain aspect of your film, which I have to give you kudos for, sometimes some people do the shaky cam thing and they can't pull it off. You are one of the rare filmmakers that I've seen like be able to pull it off well because when you do it in your film, it enhances the action and doesn't distract from it,
Oh,
which
thank
I
you.
think which I think is just operative for that type of filmmaking. How do you pull off doing the scenes that you do? Because you have your camera in the thick of fight scenes, you have a twisting and turning along with the physicality of the characters, which I think is just mind blowing how you pull that off. What are your secrets to the trade when it comes to pulling off that type of action filmmaking? Because, like I said, it's very rare when people get it right, and I'm just really interested in what the secret sauce is on your end.
Honestly, the real secret is, well, I started as a cinematographer, so I have a brain towards it a little bit, but really it just comes down to a great operator. Augustin Clermont was my DP on this, and he was also the operator. And I think crazy action, you really, depending on what camera you're shooting, like for me, if we're shooting the Alexa, we break that camera down super, super small, really tiny, because a lot of guys will like put it on their shoulder, that's going to be so shaky, it's going to make you just like, ugh. And then if you hang it from the string like a lot of guys do, that's also now it's going to be anchored on that string, and that's going to be weird. So you really need to get that, in my opinion, get that camera small enough where all the operator needs to, this is just like literally what I do. The operator needs to wear all the stuff on the back, cable to the camera. So the camera's like almost just this big, and that has a top handle. Okay. And then the monitor needs to be however that operator likes to watch. It's either here or here, depending on if they're right or left-handed. And then they film like this, like it's a little, like you're holding the camera like this. So your arm really absorbs most of the weight, but you don't have any tricks to it. And it's organic, handheld. Also, then you probably need to be on like a 24 mil or a 35 mil lens, depending on what kind of camera you're shooting. And then that's the trick to me to shooting very in your face. And you have to have an amazing focus puller who can be standing off to the side and keeping this all in focus. But that to me has always felt the richest. I still have lots to learn. Still, there's things I want to do and try. But for now, that's my recipe for handheld is getting that camera light, having a large lens so you can hold it away from you. And then a good operator will now instinctively almost not watch the thing. They will like dance with the actor and really just kind of point and just keep pointing their wrist at the action. And it's always, to me, it's always very dynamic and exciting to watch those shots,
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere.
So,
Well, I gotta say, watching it on my monitor from home, it looks incredible. I'm sure it will look even more so when people see it in theaters this Feb
thank you so
16.
much.
And I think this is a movie that people need to see in theaters because the sound effects, and the
Yeah.
halo jump was something else, and the
Oh,
battle
thank you.
scenes and the explosions and just
My
everything.
sound guys and all my guys are all guys I've worked with since Underwater, and Wayne Lamar mixed it. He spent so much time that I feel like normally on a movie of this budget you don't get that time or you don't get that ability to do that, and Wayne is just such a he does way bigger movies than me. In fact, his main guy that he works for is Wes Anderson, believe it or not. So you wouldn't think that to go Wes Anderson here, but he's such a genius. And I saw it last night again and saw it in a theater here in LA for another screening. And man, I was just so impressed with Wayne's sound design. I was like, God, he's so good. He's just so good. So
it's a great job, great craft here, and everyone out there listening, February 16 in theaters across the US, Land of Bad, Liam Hemsworth, Russell Crowe, both on top of the game. Really highly recommend that people check this out in the cinemas. Watch it in theaters, people. Buy a ticket. Watch it in theaters as it's meant to be. William Eubank, thank you for your time today. Congrats with the film.
Hey, thank you so much, Matthew. I appreciate it.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.